Bea was, I think, the straightest character, the least eccentric. But certainly her failure in life was very different from Bea's huge success in life.
The Golden Girls wasn't just a sitcom. It was comfort. It was chemistry. And it was 4 brilliant women who turned every scene into something unforgettable. Betty White, Rue McClanahan, Bea Arthur, and Estelle Getty made millions laugh, even when they weren't always laughing behind the scenes. Fans loved their sharp jokes, warm moments, and iconic one-liners. But the show also had tension, disagreements, and a few episodes that pushed things a little too far. And believe it or not, there was one episode from 1987 that Betty White never wanted to watch again. Join us as we take a closer look at the show and uncover why this episode bothered her so much. A sitcom that changed TV forever. The Golden Girls is one of those shows that never fades. It first aired on NBC in 1985 and ended in 1992, but people still watch it today like it's brand new. The show was created by Susan Harris and followed 4 older women living under one roof in Miami: Dorothy, Rose, Blanche, and Sophia. They talked about friendship, aging, and everyday life in a way no show had ever done before. Even though it was set in the 80s, it didn't rely on trends or gimmicks. It felt real because the characters felt real. As NBC executive Warren Littlefield later said about reading the pilot script for the first time, "There are no tricks. It's a classic." The production team behind the show, Paul Younger-Witt, Tony Thomas, and Susan Harris, treated it like a serious project, not just another sitcom. And the cast, that was the magic. Bea Arthur, Betty White, Rue McClanahan, and Estelle Getty were already stars before the show, but the Golden Girls made all 4 of them legends. Each actress brought her own charm, and viewers around the world connected with them immediately. The show became a massive hit, landing in the Nielsen Top 10 for 6 out of its 7 seasons. Critics praised it, fans loved it, and award shows could not ignore it. The show won Emmys, it won Golden Globes, and each of the 4 lead actresses won their own Emmy, something extremely rare for any sitcom. But the journey wasn't only awards and laughter. Behind the bright Miami kitchen and those late-night cheesecake scenes, there were moments of stress, long shooting days, and creative decisions that shaped the show forever. And those decisions would later lead to one episode that Betty White would never rewatch. And that's where the story gets even more interesting. How a simple idea became a TV hit. The origin of the Golden Girls is just as surprising as the show itself. The idea didn't come from a deep plan or a long creative meeting. It started with a funny skit. In August 1984, NBC filmed a special to introduce the network's upcoming shows. During the taping, 2 actresses, Selma Diamond and Doris Roberts, did a parody called Miami Nice, joking about older people living in Miami. The executives in the audience laughed, especially Warren Littlefield. He didn't see it as just a joke. He saw potential. He imagined a whole series built on that same humor. Not long after, he met with producers Paul Younger-Witt and Tony Thomas. They were pitching a completely different show about a female lawyer. Littlefield didn't like that idea, but he asked them something unexpected. Could they make a show about older women instead? Their main writer said no. So Witt turned to his wife, Susan Harris. She had been semi-retired and hadn't written a new show in a while. Still, when she heard the idea, she saw something special in it. She said the concept interested her because it was about a group that had never been addressed. Her version of the idea was different from what NBC expected. She wrote about women in their 60s, even though the network originally wanted characters in their 40s. But when Littlefield read her script, he was blown away. He approved the show immediately. The pilot even included a gay houseboy named Coco, played by Charles Levin. The network added him based on his popular role on Hill Street Blues. But after the pilot, the character was removed from the show. Still, the heart of the show remained strong. 4 older women supporting each other through every problem life threw at them. What no one knew at the time was how much this idea would grow, and how deeply certain storylines would affect the cast themselves, especially Betty White. Why the characters felt so real. One reason the Golden Girls worked so well was its simple premise. 4 older single women, 3 widows and 1 divorcee, shared a house in Miami. Blanche owned the house and opened it to Rose and Dorothy after they answered an ad on a grocery store bulletin board. Sophia later moved in after her retirement home burned down. It was an unusual setup for a sitcom. Older women were rarely the leads in television, and here was a show about their lives, their memories, their dating troubles, and their late-night talks. Many episodes followed the same warm pattern. Someone faced a personal problem, and the group soon gathered around the kitchen table, usually late at night, usually sharing a dessert. Then came the stories. Rose with her odd tales, often confusing everyone, and Sophia with her dramatic stories that sounded almost unbelievable. These scenes became the heart of the show, where humor mixed with real emotion. Some episodes used flashbacks to fill in the characters' pasts, even showing events that were never mentioned before. Fans loved how these stories made the characters feel like real people with full lives behind them. But even as the show grew more popular, big decisions still had to be made. And one of the biggest decisions the team faced was how to end the show. That choice came down to one cast member, Bea Arthur. When she chose to leave the series, the writers crafted a finale where Dorothy marries Blanche's uncle Lucas, played by Leslie Nielsen. Sophia plans to move with her, but then decides to stay in Miami. This ending opened the door for a spin-off, The Golden Palace. The finale drew more than 27 million viewers, proving how deeply the audience cared. And yet, even with all this success, there would always be certain episodes that left long-lasting impressions. The impact of The Golden Girls didn't end when the show went off the air. In 2013, TV Guide ranked it among the 60 best series ever made. In 2014, the Writers Guild placed it on their list of the 101 best written TV series of all time. Even decades later, critics say it has aged well, and new fans still discover it today. But its success also brought challenges. The show faced a copyright lawsuit claiming the idea had been rejected before, though the case was later settled. And according to actor Mark Feuerstein, Susan Harris once said she originally imagined the show as a story about 4 Jewish women in Florida. However, network pressure changed the direction. Even with these behind-the-scenes issues, the show stayed strong. The cast held it together with humor, honesty, and remarkable performances. Finding Sophia and the heart of the show. Casting for the Golden Girls began with the role of Sophia Petrillo, Dorothy's sharp and fearless mother. Estelle Getty was the first actress chosen, and she earned the part because of the attention she had gained in the Los Angeles run of Torch Song Trilogy. Her performance in that play stayed in the minds of many people, especially casting director Judith Weiner. Getty auditioned for other shows before the Golden Girls, including Family Ties, where she impressed the team but did not get the role. Even though she did not land that job, Weiner remembered her when it was time to choose Sophia. Getty had flown back to New York, thinking her career in television might not work out, but her manager convinced her to try once more. She returned to California for auditions in early 1985, and that decision changed her life forever. To transform into Sophia, Getty went through almost 3 hours of makeup every day. She wore thick glasses, heavy face makeup, and a white wig. The creators believe Sophia made the 3 other women feel younger on screen. Disney's Michael Eisner said it best: Estelle Getty made our 3 women into girls. But even with her strong performance, Getty struggled with stage fright. In a 1988 interview, she admitted how nervous she felt acting beside stars like Bea Arthur and Betty White. Sometimes, she even froze on camera, but she always pushed through it. Her strength helped set the tone for the whole show. But right after Sophia was chosen, casting for Blanche and Rose brought its own challenges, and that led to a surprise switch no one expected. The role swap that changed everything. Director Jay Sandrich, who shot the pilot, became a key part of casting the other 2 roles. Both Rue McClanahan and Betty White were available because their show Mama's Family had recently been canceled. At first, producers wanted White to play Blanche and McClanahan to play Rose. The idea came from their older characters. White had played the confident and flirtatious Sue Ann Nivens on The Mary Tyler Moore Show, while McClanahan had played the sweet and slightly confused Vivian Harmon in Maude. The producers thought the same type of roles would fit them here too, but both actresses wanted something new. They didn't want to repeat characters they had already played. Sandrich suggested they switch roles, and they agreed. This choice shaped the entire show. Rue became the bold, southern Blanche. Betty became the innocent, sweet Rose. But even that switch brought one more twist. In the pilot script, Blanche was described as even more southern than Blanche Dubois, the character from A Streetcar Named Desire. Rue McClanahan practiced a strong southern accent, but during the pilot, Sandrich told her not to use it. He asked her to speak with her natural Oklahoma accent instead. Later, When Paul Bogart became the new director for season 1, he asked her to bring the Southern accent back. Rue exaggerated it on purpose. She later said, "I played Blanche the way I felt Blanche." She believed Blanche wanted to be a Southern heroine, someone bold and dramatic like Vivien Leigh. That confidence made her performance unforgettable. But while Blanche and Rose fell into place, another major role needed to be filled, and this one brought tension in ways no one saw coming. Dorothy's casting and the tension behind the scenes. Susan Harris wrote the character Dorothy with a Bea Arthur type in mind. Even so, NBC and the producers first imagined actress Elaine Stritch in the part. When Stritch auditioned, it went poorly, and they moved on. Harris still hoped Bea Arthur would join the show. She even asked Rue McClanahan, who had worked with Arthur on Maude, to convince her. When Arthur read the script, she loved it immediately, but she hesitated. She worried that working with McClanahan and White might lead people to think they were repeating their old characters. She changed her mind after learning that Rue and Betty had already swapped roles. Bea Arthur and Betty White respected each other professionally and worked well together on camera, but they did not become close friends outside of filming. When personalities collide. You see, The Golden Girls is the kind of show people can watch again and again without ever getting tired of it. It had everything viewers wanted: warm friendships, late-night cheesecake talks, bold humor, and scenes that made people laugh out loud. On screen, the four women lived together, supported each other, and faced the ups and downs of life after menopause. They joked, teased, argued, and made up, and all of it felt real. The series followed 3 single women and 1 divorcee living in Miami. They were older, wiser, and not afraid to show that life doesn't stop once you reach a certain age. The show handled serious topics like mental illness, addiction, and aging long before these issues were openly discussed on TV. But while the characters always solved their problems by the end of an episode, real life wasn't always that smooth. Years after the series ended, fans learned about a feud between Betty White and Bea Arthur, something no one saw coming while watching their chemistry on screen. And that feud, surprisingly, came from a mix of personality differences, acting styles, and moments that slowly built tension behind the scenes. How such a beloved show hid such a complicated relationship is part of what makes this story so fascinating. And what happened between the 2 actresses would shape how people saw them years later. Many years after the show ended, Betty White opened up about her relationship with Bea Arthur. She said Arthur didn't like her very much, and often saw her as a pain in the neck. White believed this came from her sunny attitude. She was cheerful, upbeat, and always ready to share a laugh, even between takes. Arthur, on the other hand, was much quieter and more reserved. She took her work very seriously and preferred to save her energy for filming. White also loved spending time with the studio audience. She chatted with them, joked with them, and even made friends. Arthur didn't think this was professional. According to Arthur's son, Matthew Sachs, Arthur preferred to stay focused. He said she thought it was better to remain focused on the scene instead. White could balance both. She could entertain the audience and still deliver a great performance, and that seemed to irritate Arthur even more. Their backgrounds made the gap even wider. White had been on TV her whole career, including The Mary Tyler Moore Show, where humor was subtle and fast. Arthur came from a different world. She had done Broadway shows like Mame and TV series like Maude, which were filmed almost like theater. She was used to timing, stage presence, and strong reactions. White, meanwhile, had even worked on game shows like Password, something Arthur supposedly looked down on. As the years went on, Sachs said his mother unknowingly carried an attitude that it was fun to have someone to be mad at. And because of their opposite personalities, Betty White became that someone. This clash didn't explode into public fights, but it created a quiet tension that lasted all 7 seasons. Yet the roots of this feud went even deeper, and some fans believe what happened next played a major part. The moments that deepened the divide. By the show's 7th season, Bea Arthur was ready to leave. Some believed she simply felt the show had reached its peak, but others pointed to something she once called Dorothy bashing. Many jokes in the script focused on Dorothy's looks, her height, her masculine traits, her low appeal. For Blanche, the jokes about her character being flirty weren't personal. For Rose, the jokes about being confused or silly didn't reflect who Betty White was in real life. For Sophia, the jokes about age were part of Estelle Getty's character, not her reality. But for Arthur, the teasing hit closer to home. It affected her. It chipped away at her enjoyment of the role. and that strain may have made her relationship with White even more fragile. Yet, things weren't always cold between them. In the early seasons, White and Arthur actually lived close to each other, and even carpooled together. Rue McClanahan once told Parade that Arthur wouldn't go to lunch unless White came too. It's almost ironic, since McClanahan was the person who convinced Arthur to take the role in the first place. She had known Arthur for years, ever since they worked together on Maude. She told her the part was too good to refuse. But even their early closeness couldn't stop what was growing behind the scenes. Rumor also played a part. Some said the feud truly began when Betty White won the Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actress in a Comedy Series in the show's first season. All 4 actresses were nominated, but White was the only one who took home the award. Rue McClanahan said in her memoir, "My first 5 husbands, and the ones who got away," that Arthur was furious over it. This win, followed by the other awards the cast later received, wasn't enough to repair the distance forming between Arthur and White. And as the seasons passed, that quiet conflict became one of the show's most lasting behind-the-scenes stories. Professionalism that kept the show together. Even though Betty White and Bea Arthur didn't always get along, their professionalism was undeniable. They never let their personal feelings show on camera. They never talked about it publicly during the show's run. If they had, the show could have suffered. People might have chosen sides, the chemistry could have felt forced, and fans might not have fallen in love with the series the way they did. Someone once said that if the feud had leaked at the time, it would have branded them as difficult or unbecoming, but they kept it quiet, and that silence helped the show stay strong. What makes this even more impressive is how natural they seemed on screen. They reacted to each other perfectly. Their timing felt effortless. They lifted each other's scenes even if they were distant once the camera stopped. It shows how skilled they were and how seriously they took their craft. The rest of the cast added to that harmony. Rue McClanahan and Estelle Getty brought their own warmth, making it easy for viewers to believe that all 4 women truly lived together and shared the same home. Even though not everyone got along behind the scenes, the show never lost its magic. The talent of these 4 women made every episode shine. Their chemistry became one of the strongest parts of the series, and one of the reasons fans still watch the show today. But even a show built on friendship and laughter wasn't free from trouble. Behind all that magic, there was one episode that stirred up more attention than anyone expected. A classic show with one big controversy. When people think of the Golden Girls, they think of comfort. They think of a warm living room in Miami, quick jokes at the kitchen table, and 4 older women who could turn any problem into something a little easier to handle. The show became something people watched when they were sick, when they were sad, or when they wanted to relax. It was funny, it was wise, and it aged better than most shows from that time. But even a show as loved as The Golden Girls had moments that did not age well. And one of those moments came from an episode that was supposed to be bold and forward-thinking. The episode was titled Mixed Blessings, and it aired in March 1988 during the show's 3rd season. It told the story of Dorothy's son Michael, who brings home his fiancée, Lorraine, a 44-year-old black woman. The age difference worried Dorothy, while Lorraine's mother was worried about Michael's race. The episode tried to show how families react when 2 people break social expectations. It aimed to bring a difficult conversation onto television in a thoughtful way. But years later, the episode was suddenly pulled from Hulu because of a misunderstanding that shocked fans everywhere. And when the reason came out, people were surprised, confused, and even upset. This single moment made viewers rethink how old shows should be judged and how one scene can be misunderstood decades later. The blackface controversy that wasn't what it looked like. The big issue began with one short scene. In the episode, Lorraine's mother arrives and sees Blanche and Rose wearing dark mud masks during a spa day. Because she doesn't have her glasses on, she briefly thinks they are wearing blackface. Lorraine laughs and tells her to put her glasses on. The misunderstanding ends instantly. Blanche and Rose were not wearing blackface. They were simply doing a beauty treatment, and the scene moves on. But in 2020, Hulu removed the episode from its platform because the mud masks looked too close to blackface. To many fans, the decision felt unfair. They argued that the joke was not intended to mock anyone, and it was not harmful in the way real blackface has been historically. Blackface has a painful past. It started in the 1800s, when white performers painted their faces with dark polish to make fun of enslaved people. It was meant to insult, to belittle, and to spread stereotypes. Because of this, networks today want to avoid anything that even looks like blackface. Fans understood that part, but they felt this was different. Journalist Imani Gandhi even tweeted, "Dorothy, Rose, Sophia, and Blanche are the least problematic white women in all of television." She wrote that fans know the difference between mud masks and blackface. But Hulu still removed the episode for a while, and many viewers felt the network overreacted. They worried the show was being judged unfairly, especially since The Golden Girls was often ahead of its time in tackling difficult or uncomfortable topics. Yet, the mud mask moment wasn't the only thing in the episode that made people revisit it with new eyes. There was another scene that stirred even more debate. The scene that sparked even more debate. Later in the episode, all the characters gather in the kitchen to talk about Michael and Lorraine's wedding. Before they can discuss their concerns, Sophia looks at Lorraine's mother, Greta, and asks a bold question about black men's sexual abilities. Blanche quickly says yes, then tries to step back, only to admit she is curious too. Dorothy scolds them for repeating stereotypes. But Greta's sister Trudy shrugs and says, "Call it whatever you want, I'm just grateful it's true." In 1988, the scene was considered daring. The show often pushed boundaries by talking openly about things that other sitcoms avoided. But today, viewers see the scene differently. What was meant as a joke in the 80s now feels like uncomfortable fetishization. Even positive stereotypes can cause harm because they reduce people to a single idea. But despite these questionable moments, the episode had a clear message. It tried to show how families deal with race, age gaps, and uncomfortable conversations. In the end, Michael and Lorraine elope. Dorothy and Greta decide that they will pretend to be happy because they are mothers, and mothers want their children to be safe and loved. One moment later in the episode shows the tone the writers were aiming for. Rose asks Dorothy if she can ask a dumb question. Dorothy snaps, "Better than anyone I know." Rose then asks what color black people's dandruff is. Dorothy answers, "They don't get it because God says they have been through enough already." It shows the episode was trying to talk about race, while also keeping the tone light. The show wasn't trying to offend. It was trying to discuss things in a way television rarely did in the 80s. Even so, many viewers today still feel uneasy about the episode, while others believe the intention matters more than the outdated jokes. The episode returned to Hulu eventually, but the debate around it didn't disappear. And Mixed Blessings wasn't the only controversial episode from the show's history. How the controversies connected to the cast and Betty White's own disappointments. Another controversial episode from the series was Sisters of the Bride in Season 6. In that episode, Blanche's brother Clayton celebrates a commitment ceremony with his partner. Same-sex marriage was not legal at the time, and the scene was groundbreaking. Writer Mark Cherry later said, "If we weren't the first, we were only the second show to do something about gay marriage, but not everyone approved." Cherry said they received death threats after the episode aired. They even showed him a letter addressed to the F. King Jew producers of Golden Girls. The situation became so serious that Cherry and his writing partner had to unlist their phone numbers. These episodes show how the Golden Girls was willing to talk about issues most shows avoided. It tried to open conversations, even if those conversations were messy or imperfect. But when it comes to Betty White herself, the biggest disappointment she ever spoke about wasn't an episode. It was the show's spin-off, The Golden Palace. When Bea Arthur left the original show, Betty White said the heart of the series left too. She explained that without Arthur, The Golden Palace felt like Golden Girls in the lobby without Bea, and she said it just doesn't work. She compared the show to a table missing one of its legs. No matter how strong the other legs were, the whole thing felt unbalanced. Even though there were rumors about tension between White and Arthur, Betty did not speak badly about her. Screen Rant noted that she was usually quiet about any dislike, and said the problem came from her own positive attitude, which Arthur found annoying. Their complicated relationship, the brave episodes, and the misunderstandings over time all show how layered the show was. Which Golden Girls episode do you think aged the best? And which one do you feel didn't age well at all? And if you could bring back one cast member for one final scene, who would you choose and why? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more incredible stories from Hollywood's fascinating history. See you next time.